Prejudging just wasn't his best showing. I know he knows that. For finals, I thought he came back way more polished.
What's up guys, and welcome. You are watching Fazi Fitness. So guys, channel membership is now live. Link is in the description and the first comment. Do check it out. That would really help support the channel. So let's start this video with 3 days out physique update. From the Pittsburgh Pro Classic Physique Champion, Terrence Ruffin. So the man is now getting ready for round 2 against Josema Beast, aka Jose Manuel. And if we talk about conditioning alone, Josema actually had superior conditioning than Terrence Ruffin at this past Pittsburgh Pro. It was Terrence's shape that carried him towards the victory at this year's Pittsburgh Pro. I mean, he's arguably one of the most classy looking guy in that entire division, and I'm not implying that Terrence was off by any means, but the fact is Josema Beast, he has set such high standards in terms of conditioning and the hardness and the dryness. It kind of seemed like that he even surpassed the hardness and the conditioning of Logan Franklin from this past Arnold, Ohio, where Logan placed second behind Mike Sommerfeld, presenting his all-time best. So from the looks of it and how the Pittsburgh Pro went, Terrence is probably gonna try to come in harder and way drier for the New York Pro this year. And that was actually the feedback given to him by the judges at the Pittsburgh Pro, for him to make some more improvements in his back, get more hamstrings in the side shots, and he definitely needs more time for that. So that one shot, that back double biceps, that is gonna go towards Josema Beast anyway, because that is how good that man is from the back. He's totally untouchable. But if Terrence comes in even better at the New York Pro, especially in terms of the conditioning compared to how he looked in Pittsburgh, the shape that this guy has overall, his amazing flow, arguably one of the best looking classic lines in the world, he's gonna add another pro victory to his resume. Now Terrence did point out very interesting fact. He now has the most number of pro wins in the entire classic physique division, and he's about to get that win number 10 in 3 days time. Most definitely one of the greatest classic physique competitor that we have seen since the division was created back in 2016. Next up, we have the physique update from Rubiel Rafael, aka Nexilla, on his road to this year's Dubai Pro. So this is a guy who has been completely counted out, simply because he did not take last year seriously at all, except for that one show, which was Dubai Pro. He skipped so many shows, and he did not just skip, he pulled out of so many shows, starting from the Arnold, Ohio, to Arnold, UK, to New York Pro, and then that whole European tour after Dubai Pro. And he was supposed to do all these shows originally. But that being said, the fact is you can never underestimate a guy who has that kind of size, who has such freaky body parts. The main one, his quads. So the condition looks real nice with another 5.5 weeks to go. And we all want to see Rubiel surpass his Pro look from back in 2023, where he made his pro debut and where he shocked the entire bodybuilding world by showing up just 1 day after turning pro, beating a guy like Nathan Deisha. And not just him, some people even had him beating Crizo. Guys like Nick Walker and Dennis James, they had Rubiel beating Crizo. Now yes, Rubiel does have some flaws. His shoulders do not match the size of his huge arms and his chest. But the fact is, if he gets really shredded and comes in very dry and somehow attains more separation and more detail in the quads, he's gonna look so impressive and so freaky, and he can be very dangerous no matter who shows up, because it's simply so difficult to take your eyes off him because of the amount of muscle mass that he carried. So the 2 pro shows that Rubiel has done so far, he wasn't at his best at either of them, and his former coach Chris Cormier, he attributed that to the lack of commitment. Now for Rubiel to be a top IFBB pro and potentially a top Olympian, which by the way is 100% a possibility, he has to lock himself in and he has to be 100% focused on just the bodybuilding lifestyle all throughout the year. So Rubiel, as of right now, he doesn't have the quality to beat a guy like Behrouz Tabani, who's also doing Dubai Pro and who is also the defending champion. So hopefully Rubiel is gonna continue to compete in other shows until he gets his Olympia qualification. Next up, we have the off-season physique update from Rafael Brandao. So the start of his off-season, that was pretty rough, as he had to pull back on training as well as the food, especially in terms of the volume, to address some health issues because he was having that gut problem that forced him to drop the amount of protein that he was taking before. And many of us who have been following Rafael throughout his pro journey, the one thing that we can all agree on is that he isn't a guy who puts on size in a short amount of time, especially the same way guys like Samson Dauda, Andrew Jack, Hunter Labrada, or Nick Walker do. He needs bigger time spans. He needs longer off-season to get bigger and to put on more muscle. And the biggest jump that Brandao made in terms of his overall progress, that was when he took the entire year off and he came back for the Arnold Ohio last year. And he placed top 3 behind Hadi Choopan and Samson. And that was undoubtedly the best look of his entire career. But he still wasn't good enough in terms of size to make a case for him against guys like Samson Dauda and Andrew, who was big time off at the Arnold Ohio last year. And the reason Rafael still could not beat him was the lack of size. So Rafael has now been putting more foot down, and he still has got a few more months before he has to start the prep for the Olympia this year. So he's a top 8 Olympian from last year. Now he could have been one spot higher if he was 100%. So the thing that goes in Rafael's favor is that many judges, they like that kind of physique with clean lines, very aesthetic and very classic, very tapered down waistline. He doesn't have a single weak shot, except for the fact that he still needs more size. Now, we do not have Hunter Labrada in this year's Olympia lineup, but we're gonna have Nick Walker. So Rafael Brandao has to show up very improved, especially in terms of size, to move up from that 8th place. So it was a very disappointing showing for Martin-Fitzwater at this past Pittsburgh Pro. He was simply way too off, especially at the prejudging, simply because he missed his peak, and that too by quite some margin. And nobody even talked about the size that he put on from Prague last year to the Pittsburgh Pro this year, because the lack of conditioning and the detail, that totally ruined that, and he looked kind of washed out. But to all the people out there who are saying that he was a one-hit wonder and that was at the Olympia last year, just listen to theMartian-Fitzwater's comments about Martin. Even after this disappointing Pittsburgh Pro showing, he still thinks that Martin has the ability and he has the balance to do what Nick did in Pittsburgh Pro and shock us all at the Olympia this year. And he can be in the race. Who's going to be fighting for the Olympia title maybe as soon as this year, and definitely in the future.
By the end of this year and by the Olympia, he can bring something that, how I mentioned before with Nick joining those top 3 guys from the past 3 years, I feel like Martin has the possibility of taking that step by the end of the year as well. So
now the problem with Martin is that he can never come in off, not even slightly. He doesn't have super separated arms or any standout body parts. He does have amazing quads, but I'm talking about the upper body. So if he comes in off, he just loses so much detail, and not just in the upper half, in his quads as well. So what makes his quads so impressive, that is the sweep on it. So when Martin lacks the condition, like we just saw at the Pittsburgh Pro, he just doesn't stand out at all on the stage, and he looks kind of washed out. But still, those words from theMartian, they are gonna be a big motivating factor for Martin-Fitzwater moving forward, as he's now fully focused on the Olympia in October. The 7 times Olympia champion Phil Heath and the 4 times Olympia champion Jay Cutler, or some would say that there was a time when Jay was the teacher and Phil was a student, and eventually Phil made history by beating him in 2011. Well, both these guys, they recreated their legendary 2-man callout that we saw back in 2011. So Jay is now 51 years old. So he's 6 years older than Phil Heath. But both these guys are in a crazy good shape, especially for their age. The quads on both these guys, they still look super impressive. And it is actually surprising that Phil's quads still look so damn big. And that's separated, as he doesn't even train legs anymore. Yes, he doesn't. So another thing that you can kind of see is that Phil Heath no longer has that stomach distension, which by the way was the major factor in him losing the Olympia title to the late Sean Roden. And this actually became a problem because of one simple reason, and that reason is Big Ramy. Because he was consuming so much food to get bigger, trying to stop Big Ramy and not giving him as much of an edge in terms of the size. And Ramy, we all know, was a real monster. But that, we all know, was a mistake on Phil Heath's part. Now Phil could still do the Masters Olympia if he wanted to, especially if there was enough money to grab. But we know that's not happening. But these two legends, they had a pose down, and that brought back all the memories from 2010 and 2011. So Jay Cutler in 2010 and also in 2011, he was really good. And Phil Heath had to be at his all-time best in 2011 to beat Jay Cutler and win the Olympia title. So hit the thumbs up button if you liked the video and smash the subscribe button if you wanna come back for more. Thanks for watching.